Autumn Nations Cup, the Sunday game is Scotland against France. It's a bit of a weird group, the old Group B, because with Fiji having the COVID cases, their match against France last week was called a win for France, hence the one win, hence them being first. 28-0, bonus point is the declared win. So France are on top despite having not played a game. Fiji's game against Italy has also been canned, so Italy will get the same. And I think I just read yesterday that their next week's game against Scotland has also been canned. So essentially, France, Italy, and Scotland will all get a 5-point start. So this game, in all likelihood, decides who's going to be the top dog in this group. Because Italy has already lost one. And stranger things have happened, but it's likely whoever wins this game goes on a flawless run. Well, if Scotland win, they'll certainly be top because they've already beaten Italy and they've got a free game next week, essentially. So, yeah, it's at Murrayfield, which is generally a bit of a fortress for the Scots, and they're on a pretty good run. I think they said that they're almost at a 6-match winning run. If they get this win, it'll be 6 matches, which is like they've only done a couple of times in their history. So, yeah, a bit of pressure on. But remember, this French team, with all the young guns they've been bringing through and the general form they've been in 2020, are not going to make anybody's life easy. I'll go through the teams quickly, the predictions, and the recent history. You guys can let me know your thoughts on how this one is going to play out. For Scotland, I can see they've made a few changes. They've changed the front row. Ollie Kebble starts in place of Rory Sutherland, who is apparently injured, which is a bit of a big blow because he's a hell of a scrummager. Fraser Brown comes in for Stuart McAnally, which I didn't read that McAnally is injured, so I'm not sure if that's just a tactical change, but McAnally is not even on the bench. It's Turner. And Simon Berghan comes in for Zander Fagerson, who retains his spot in the squad. He's still on the bench, but he's been starting generally in recent times. The second row is the same with Cummings and Jonny Gray, and the back row's just got one change. It's still Ritchie and Watson at 6 and 7. Hell of a combination always, but Matt Fagerson's back from injury, so he comes in for Blair Thomson. Blair Thomson drops to the bench, which means Nick Hanning drops out of the 23 entirely. And I do like Blair Thomson. He probably did concede, I think, too many penalties last week, but overall, he's a good addition to the squad when he's playing. The back line is all the same except for one change as well. You've still got Ali Price and Duncan Weir at 9 and 10. Remember, there's no Hastings and there's no Russell because those guys are injured. Johnson and Chris Harris is the midfield, 12 and 13. Again, pretty useful midfield. Duhan van der Merwe's been tearing things up on that left wing. He will continue to do so. Blair Kinghorn comes in for Darcy Graham. I didn't read that he's injured. I tried to find if he's injured, but they didn't mention it. They certainly mentioned Sutherland was injured. So, yeah, it's a weird one because Graham, I thought, was in pretty fine form last week. But yeah, Kinghorn is favoured there, and Stuart Hogg continues on at fullback. The reserves, Turner, Bhatti, Zander Fagerson, Sam Skinner, Blair Thomson, Hidalgo-Clyne, Duncan Taylor, and Sean Maitland is back as well. So there's a good mix of youth and experience, I think, in this Scottish squad. They've got depth in pretty much every position, don't they? So, talking to some Scottish fans in the comments and on Patreon and whatnot, there seems to be a general consensus that once you guys get on a run and start to get some confidence and maybe think of yourselves as the favourites, that tends to be when everything goes to custard. Let's hope not, man. I mean, it's been a while since we've seen a Scottish team with that much talent in it, so let's hope they can kind of live up to the potential. That being said, though, the French team is not exactly one full of no-hopers, man. There's bucket loads of potential in that team as well. They've made 8 changes from their team that last played, but remember, they didn't get a game last week, so it's not like week-on-week changes. They've got a new front row with Gross, Shat, and Bamba. So the 3 guys who started in the last game, which was Marchand, Bay, and Haas, those 3 guys are on the bench, so at least they're still in the squad. LaRue and Telfa Fanua are your locks, which means Willemse is on the bench. And the Lucies, you've got Cretin, Olivon, and Aldrit. I think Hus is injured for this one, so they've had to make some changes. Wilkie comes into the bench. Dupont continues on at 9. He got awarded like the player of the Six Nations, and he was in phenomenal form. He is just bloody dangerous, but he is without his partner Roman and Tamak, who is injured. So Matthieu Jalibert comes in at number 10. Also, Bouthier is injured, the fullback, so Ramos comes in at 15. You would expect him to be doing the goal kicking. And you've got Fickou and Vakatawa in the midfield. So Fickou, I think, played wing last time. He moves into the midfield. He's good wherever he plays, to be honest. And you got Teddy Thomas, who gets a lot of grief. Teddy Thomas, with his defence, sometimes gets a lot of criticism. But the dude is magic. Was it Wales? He scored that magic individual try. The dude is very dangerous. He's a risk-reward player. And if he fires, there could be trouble. Rattez on the other wing. So that's the starting 15. I mentioned the front rowers and Willems and Wilkie. The backs, Baptiste Corlo. I'm not actually sure. I don't know that guy. Carbonell and Arthur Vincent are the back reserves. So, yeah, as I mentioned, it's certainly a French team with a bunch of talent. Not that many of those guys are like kind of hugely senior players. There's certainly guys who've been around the blocks for a while, but with one eye on the 2023 World Cup, France is a team people are talking about for a reason. But remember, they didn't have a game last week, so there may be a bit of rust. Whereas Scotland, like they didn't kind of set the world alight against Italy, but man, did they did, and some people mentioned in the comments as well, they still got a bonus point win without really hitting top gear, which is generally a sign of a pretty good team. You know what I mean? You see those teams, I mean, again, I'm from New Zealand, so we often see Super Rugby, but the Crusaders can sometimes have a pretty average outing and still get a win, even a bonus point win. You know what I mean? Like they might go behind or they might be under pressure and they don't quite hit their 100% mark, but they can still grind out a win and still look, good enough. So, yeah, that's where I think Scotland, I'm not saying they're the Crusaders because that's a totally different kettle of fish, but yeah, man, certainly did enough last week and put themselves in a good position for this competition. They are at home, which is, as I said, generally a pretty good hunting ground for them. But remember, there's no crowd, so that takes away a little bit of that home advantage factor. The last 5 is 3 wins and 2 losses. So 3 wins to Scotland, 2 losses to Scotland, 2 wins for France and vice versa. But the average scoreline is actually 23-18 in favour of France because when they've won, they've tended to win bigger. So, but they haven't won at Murrayfield for a while. Last time was in 2014. So it's been quite some time. I don't know how many of those current French guys would have been in that squad 6 years ago that got a win over in Scotland. It would have looked quite different. And remember, the one team who managed to get a win over France in the Six Nations this year, it was Scotland. So, yeah, maybe a little bit of a mental advantage to Scotland, but as I said, and some of you guys have mentioned, does the pressure of being favourites get to them? I actually haven't looked up the bookies odds. I'll do that now, and then I'll come back. Well, there you go. Maybe there isn't any pressure on Scotland because I did check the bookies odds and France are favourites. France are favourites by 5 points. So maybe Scotland do go into this one without that same pressure of expectation. That being said, it's one of those few times when I check the bookies and it goes one way and I check the rugby forecast algorithm, which remember looks at like historical results, home, away and all that kind of stuff. And it's got Scotland by 7. Although I know the guy who runs Rugby Forecast is a Scotsman. So maybe that's a factor. It's an algorithm, so surely not. But anyway, hopefully it's a good game. It's on a Monday here in New Zealand, which means I might have to work from home on Monday. But yeah, should be a good game. As I mentioned, it's going to be a vitally important one in terms of deciding how this group plays out. Barring a big Italian win in the next round, this one should decide who goes top of the group. So, yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts on this one. France, bookies' favourite. Scotland, the algorithm's favourite. Which one are you guys backing? Key selections. How do you think things are going to go? And, yeah, I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.